כולנו כאחד, ויור בניך ברכנו, אבינו כולנו כאחד, כולנו כאחד, ויור בניך ברכנו, אבינו כולנו כאחד, כולנו כאחד, ויור בניך. Bezrat Hashem, the limud this week should be the refuat Morenu v'Rabbeinu Harav Menachem Yehoshua ben Yair Eisenstock, והחולה הרב סיוון בן סימה, והחולה שלומית בת חיה, בתוך כל שאר חולי ישראל. Parashat Nasso has a very interesting 3-4 psukim in the middle of the parasha. And those 3-4 psukim are Birkat Kohanim. And for many of us, it appears in an area that we would have never expected. The beginning of the parsha starts with the story of Sota, then the story of Nazir, and ends with Chanukat HaMishkan, Korbanot HaNesim. And in between these 3 stories, we have Birkat Kohanim. And before we try and understand why it appears here, the general question we need to ask ourselves is, what is a bracha all about? Every one of us, from the moment we wake up till we lie down and go to sleep, we make 100 brachot every day. Bracha is so emphasized in Judaism. We see in Sefer Breshit, there is no leader chosen in the world who does not receive the bracha from Hashem. So we'll first try and understand a little bit, what is the bracha truly about? And maybe by understanding a little bit deeper the concept of bracha in Judaism, we'll be able to understand why the bracha appears where it appears in Parashat Nasso. So says the Sefat Emet, B'inyan Birkat Kohanim. What is Birkat Kohanim all about? So he brings in a midrash, En kli machzik bracha ela shalom. Explains the midrash that the only thing that bracha could be connected to is shalom, shlemut. And this one sentence, the midrash, totally takes us away from what we expected the bracha to be. I think in general, if you would ask people, what is a bracha about? They'll say someone is missing something. There's something lacking in a person's life, lacking in the reality, and the bracha fills in this gap. The midrash says no. Bracha is connected to shlemut, to shalom, to something whole, and not to something incomplete. So where do we learn this from? Continues the Sefat Emet. V'lachen k'tiv vayivarech Elokim et yom hashvi'i. When Hashem creates the world, there are 7 days. And only one day out of all 7 receive a bracha. The first 6 days of creation, the days themselves do not receive a bracha. Man receives a bracha, the dagim, the fish, receive a bracha, but the day itself never receives a bracha. Because what would a day need a bracha for? Suddenly Shabbat as a day, a time in the world, receives a bracha. And you see this and you say to yourself, why does Shabbat need a bracha? What does it mean that Hashem gives a bracha to Shabbat? He gives a bracha to man so that man can reach a higher level. But Shabbat, why does Shabbat receive a bracha? And in a very deep level, the Shabbat receives a bracha because Shabbat is shalom. Shabbat is the end of creation, and only when everything is perfect, everything is complete, there's a place for a bracha. Because the bracha is not coming to add something. It's not coming to bring something new, but it's enabling a person to go beyond the outer picture of what they see. Because Shabbat is part of reality. We all eat and sleep and breathe the same way we do during the week. But what makes Shabbat unique is that we don't do anything. We stop building, creating. We stop feeling like we're lacking something in life, like we're missing something. And we start looking in and asking ourselves, do we see the bracha? The bracha meaning the ability to find not what you see, but what's beyond what you see. And brings the Sefat Emet an incredible question from the Zohar Kadosh. And he says, Zohar Kadosh says, wait 1 minute. If you say that Shabbat is different than all the other days, it's more unique, it's more special, let's go somewhere else in Torah where we see the difference between the 6 days of the week and Shabbat. And when we go to Sefer Shmot Parashat Beshalach, Perek Tet Zayin, we see the Parshiah of Man. And when we see the Parshiah of Man, the 6 days of the week receive Man. They receive a present from God. Seems to be the most amazing day. And Shabbat does not receive Man. So the Zohar Kadosh screams, and he says, Ribono Shel Olam, you gave a bracha to Shabbat, and Shabbat has nothing. You would expect, Shabbat should have the man, and it will give you enough ability to feel full that you won't need to eat the 6 days of the week. But in the creation of the world, Hashem gives a bracha to Shabbat, and what is it? No food. Explains the Sefat Emet. Why? Says the Sefat Emet that if we give a portion of food to a certain day, it becomes its own world, its own day. Because it received something from God, so it's connected to that specific part that Hashem gave him. Similar to the creation of the world. If the first day light was created, then the first day could only be light. That's all it could be. But if Shabbat is all about Kivosh Shavat Mikol Melachto, it means that the bracha is not what you do, but it's the way you find the depth behind the actions that you do. And we asked ourselves, what does a bracha mean? According to the Sefat Emet, what we saw now in relation to Shabbat, bracha, first of all, is not thanking God. He doesn't need our thanks. And if you want to say thank you, there are many words in Hebrew that know how to say thank you. Just say todah. So bracha cannot be thank you, Hashem. But a bracha is not a request to receive something I don't have. It's to be able to find within what I have the meaning, the purpose behind the things I do. Moriv Rabbi Reb Shlomo Karbach says that there are two kinds of eyes in the world. And he calls the first set of eyes Einei Navi, the eyes of a Navi. He says they're great, but their job is to pass over information. This person did this person did that, finish. Says Reb Shlomo, there's a higher set of eyes, which are Einei Mashiach. Mashiach doesn't ask what you're doing, and he doesn't pass over information. When Mashiach relates to people, like we could see in a lot of different places, it's not about what you did or didn't do, but it's about what's beyond your actions. You could do all the right actions and be the worst creep in the world, and you could do no seemingly mitzvot that people could see, but be the most miraculous person in the world. Because it's not a question always of how much, but just a question of how. How did you daven? Not how much. You could daven for 5 seconds or for 5 minutes, but they have a total different connection to your heart. So it's not about how much, but it's about how. And Einei Mashiach are on a very deep level the true meaning of a bracha. Because the bracha realizes that when I make a bracha on an apple, I'm not saying thank you like we said before. I'm trying to see, to feel, to realize, where does the apple get its life from, and how can it give me life? How can I not just be an animal that acts, but before the action looks? The bracha is so much similar to the Shabbat. Because the bracha, it's not an action. It's the moment before the action you stop and you look in. And we know in our lives we could have many conversations with different people. But the same conversation you have with a person you love, or a conversation you have with a random person you meet on the street, has a very different purpose. One is for information and one is for connection. And the bracha is saying, you could live a life of information of 2 + 2 = 4, but you could live a life of 1 + 1 = 1. That it's not about the addition of 2 numbers together, but finding the connection between differences in the world. That is truly the meaning of the bracha. And I think to go back to our Parashat Nasso, it's amazing to see that the bracha appears after 2 different stories. One is the Sotah, and one is the Nazir. And they both were in irregular worlds of mundane actions. And the Sotah built a relationship that was solely information. So the Sotah could very simply separate from her home, her husband, and her family, and bring her life in the world to a very low place. And they say, why is Nazir right after Sotah? Kol haro'eh Sotah bekilkula yazir atzmo min hayayin. But what is the Nazir saying? The Nazir is saying the opposite of the Sotah. The Nazir isn't looking just for the ability to live information, but they want to find God everywhere. They want to find the meaning in everything. And so the Nazir is the opposite of the Sotah. And that brings the ability for a bracha. And that leads to the end of the parasha, to the Nesi'im. Chanukat Mishkan, the Nesi'im, are the ones who brought the Mishkan back to the world after Chet HaEgel. And Chet HaEgel was when we thought the Torah was just information. We lost the Torah. And the Mishkan hides Ma'amad Har Sinai, according to the Ramban, inside Kodesh HaKodashim. Meaning that the Mishkan teaches you that the bracha is not what you see, but like Kodesh HaKodashim, it's what's beyond. And that is the bringing back, the renewing of the Mishkan. That Birkat Kohanim stands in the middle and yells out to the world every single day, do you live a life of information, or do you live a life of connection? And for this reason, every day we make 100 brachot, because it's so easy to live a life of information, because that's natural. But the ability to find a life of connection takes constant realization of looking for the bracha that's behind every part of reality. Like Shabbat is what gives life to the week. We should be zochet to have a Shabbat of not looking for how much we do, but to look around us and see the bracha in life, the bracha on our Shabbat table, the bracha on our families, and then we could really rebuild the Mishkan in the world. Shabbat Shalom.